Mhm.
Okay, we have sound.
Yeah. This,
Hi, Tom. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay,
and
good.
he sees that.
Hot mic.
And can we get this on so they can?
No, because all of my cords are plugged in to stuff.
So we're gonna have to use that microphone.
What about with it?
All right. Let us know if you guys have any trouble hearing stuff. A little bit of technical difficulty.
Can everyone hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Connie, can you say something to make sure they can hear you?
Your mic is not on.
We are recording.
Sorry. I've got to dial it in.
Before we get going, I want everyone to know. No, it's really not. You guys can't see it. This is the same agenda as everybody else, but she has sent me a really nice annotated copy. You have this. I hate lost. Let's see. Viewed the agenda this morning. I think we got a pretty good one today. We have a lot to get through. Hopefully we get through it in an hour and a half, 2 hours. We absolutely outside. Does anybody have that kind of attention span?
You're having trouble hearing.
Then with that said, go straight to roll call.
Alice just said they can't hear.
Mike Price, United States Stewart.
Sure.
Lindsay Fowler, Commissioner.
Still the very commission.
Just needs to speak up.
Oh, so I'm on the.
How about now? Can you guys hear us now? I'm sorry, time out, please. The people online are having trouble hearing us. I just want to make sure that that's dialed in right. Can you, all right. Commissioner Quinn, would you mind giving us a test count?
Test, 1, 2, ABC, test.
That's better?
That was for you talking.
Oh, that's me talking, yes. I'm right next to a microphone, but, all right, so. No, that's not gonna work either. Yeah, we'll work on that just a second. Another test, please.
Test.
Thank you.
Here, Micah. Get some cards.
All right, let's try this again. Thank you so much. I have to plug in that front speaker after.
Okay.
Oh, that's not gonna work. This room is so echoey.
Everybody's had a chance to review. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Please mute your speakers, your microphones if you're not actively speaking. Thank you.
Before we move the agenda, we're gonna switch the first 2 items, if that's all right. Probable review will be first, and review on restrictions of devices like that, so, motion to approve that agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda. I second.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Probable, where we want to start, we have someone speak.
I don't see the jockeys here yet, but I would request that Darrell Hare approach the room.
We're doing this a little different than in the past. We're doing public comment first from anybody who wants to give it before we talk about it. After Daryl talks, I think we'll also talk about why, I'll share with them why this is on the agenda.
Good morning, Chairman Barry, Commissioners, Executive Director Quinn, Mike, it's good to see you all. I'm here to answer any questions, assist in any throughout the country, and have a good understanding of the rules.
So perhaps this is a good time for me to address why this is on here. Unfortunately, I don't see Commissioner Beck said he requested this. This was in response to a concern that was brought up in the Olympics. And he wanted us to have it on there to see if we should use props. And I told him that we would put it on the agenda and that we wanted to hear from especially the jockeys or the representatives on the safety issues around the crop and what their recommendations are.
Well, and my name is Darrell Aker. I am the Western Regional Manager of the Jockeys Guild. I've been in this business all my life. I own races for 16 years, and I've been in this position as the manager for the last 25. I believe that riding crops are essential in horse racing and riding races. They're a valuable tool if used correctly, and that is to get a horse's attention, get them to respond, and get the most out of it. So the fans, the bettors, they get their money's worth also. Again, it is a valuable tool that I wouldn't feel comfortable in a race on a horse if I didn't have a riding crop. I have to get a horse's attention at times real quick, and I would feel like, I don't know, I just wouldn't feel comfortable for safety reasons mostly.
Are there times when you need the horse's attention for more than just you want to get the best out of them, but because it is a safety issue, and if you could explain more about that, I think that'd be helpful.
Yes, Chairman Fowler, is, at any given time, racehorses are high-strung animals, and you get, a lot of times, riders never see them until they get them in the paddock. And being high-strung, you have to get their attention, sometimes really quick, just to make them do the right thing. So, in that situation of safety, you have to get their attention. They're an animal, and it's a must for safety reasons.
That would be for the safety of the jockey as well as the other horses, right?
Yes. And you get, some of these horses are big, strong studs, and they want to control you.
Yeah.
So you have to let them know, that you have the control without abusing. There's no, in this day and age especially, you can't abuse a horse. They're an animal that gets a lot of loving care all the time. And you try to do that same when you're on the horse's back. So they respect you also. It's the interchange that you have while you're on the back. And you have to get their attention.
But am I correct in that there's a lot of ways you can use a prop without actually hitting a horse to get their attention? I see often, and I know in my own experience riding my horse, often just it being there or showing it to the horse gets the response you need without having to touch them. Would that be correct?
Yes, exactly. You just show it to them, let them know it's there, and they know what it's for, most of them. And it's just, it's a tool to communicate with. And you're supposed to be, finding out about them. They're a tool for you, whether you're speaking to them, talking to them, they get to know you. And that's
Would that be kind of similar? I mean, I think about, I have a horse that's off the track, and anytime he's overly excited, I'll put a sledgehammer over his nose. I'll never use it, but just the fact that it's there, he is much more behaved. It would be comparable to that.
Communication happening there. They say,
Mr. Harris, could you talk a little bit about the construction of the crop itself? The new and improved variety crop?
yes, streets that rice crops are so much kinder nowadays. In years past, they were mostly leather, and they had feathers on them also to protect the horse's skin from cutting. And they used to sting quite a bit. Nowadays, and they are softer material, where it's like foam, and they don't cut a horse like they used to, or even leave wells. Nowadays, if you even leave wells, you can be fined. So they're a lot kinder, and years ago, the game was very different, and the poppers, you can make them even sting even more, by sewing pennies or quarters in the poppers and making them sting. Can't do that anymore. They have different types, but again, it's foam, and it doesn't, it makes it pay attention, but it doesn't leave welts or bruises or cut them. It's much more kinder to horses.
We're among horsemen, and I don't think it's anything controversial if the use of the aids is necessary to control the animal, keep everybody safe. It absolutely is. The general public knows nothing about it. I bought horses that have been pretty late. I'm gonna ride around it when I get out of here tomorrow. And went through a few drive-throughs, ate some road junk food. And all the curious and wonderful comments I got from people who know zero, zilch, nothing, nada about the horse except what they've seen on My Little Pony. I don't know, Black Beauty. How do we communicate to people who come to races, people who will see these races on YouTube? How do we help them understand proportionally you weigh less compared to that horse than my 4-year-old kid does to me? And you gotta be in charge as that thing goes adrenaline pumped, green through space, and a bunch of other often young, hot-headed animals. How do we help people understand the safety that the aids bring? I want the general public to say, this is the right thing to do.
Well, January is the industry is taking such a hit in the last 5 or 6 years, and we're lucky we didn't lose this game. Public perception from what has happened at Sandia a few years ago really turned things upside down. It hurt me to be around people that don't know about the racetrack, just what they read and hear all the time. They don't know how careful these horses are. To educate them, the care, I think they're doing a good job. With HISA now, too, all the rules that are in place, there is some uniformity finally. So I think people are public, and I'm seeing and hearing responses, people getting engaged. It's embarrassing. You really to be around San Diego or even down these problems. And it really hurt me. We were the bad guys. If you were going to a restaurant and you were associated with the racetrack, the general public was like, you were the bad guy. Really? It was that negative. But I'm feeling the last year, the turnaround, and it's a good thing because of things that have been put in place. And you're getting more people. We have less horses now, but we're getting more people that want to get involved. So it's a good feeling. It's a good thing. And we are educating. There's different programs now, so people can really feel what the industry's about. There's so much love and compassion. People that come out and watch horses train in the morning, they love it. And once you get hooked in this game, you're hooked. And there's a lot of good people that are hooked now. So I have a really positive feeling about what's going on now. And people love horses. They love riding. And I think with the perception of the public now, it's so much better. It's such great racing throughout the country. I think it's going to turn around, I hope.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for your time and comments.
Commissioners, the people on the computer are still having a really hard time hearing. Our remote participants are still having a really hard time hearing you guys' table, so if you can speak loudly into your microphones.
Test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3, is that better?
Push. Oh, that's not good. All right.
Test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3, better?
Can we hear?
Can you hear me now?
Connie is good. Yes, we
Connie.
know.
Fine, it's good, okay.
We know that.
No.
Okay. I'm not aware of any allegations that there have been inappropriate uses of whips that have gone unaddressed, or crops. We don't use whips. We use crops. It's important. I don't think we need to go through this. Oh God, there's a lot of puns available. We don't need to go through each item here.
No, that was just for your.
Okay.
Skip that.
Restrictions on devices such as magnetic blankets. Anybody have anything on magnetic blankets or other devices that you could use on a horse?
This was entered through NRCI, recently adopted this. So this is for discussion purposes only today to get your opinion on, you want to read off the different devices? I'll read off. Within 48 hours prior to start of the published post time for which a horse is scheduled to race, you may not use pulsed PEMF, pulse electromagnetic field, lasers, nebulizers, electromagnetic blankets, whirlpool boots, the use of acupuncture. And I think in addition to hearing the individuals here, it's very important on these to get the opinions of our 3 veterinarians that are on. Hopefully we'll be able to hear them. Otherwise, Micah's going to be interpreting for them. Does anyone in the audience have any comments on any of those matters? Concerns, questions,
Alice?
I think it's opening up a giant can of worms. I think it's worth discussing. I think using the term medical devices gets us way down many, many rabbit holes. So I think we need to be careful about how we specifically define things that we find that are either harmful or masking pain in any way in a horse prior to a race. But I mean, we could talk about this for the rest of the day, right? Magnetic blankets versus the nebulizer versus acupuncture are all very different modalities and very different things. So again, I will talk all day about this, but I don't know that we need to necessarily just yet. I think it's worth discussing, but I think we need to be more specific about what we are discussing.
I think that's exactly what I'm not so concerned about magnetic blankets, but maybe there are other things that we should be. Turn our eyes, where should we be looking for devices that could potentially be harmful to animal or human health?
And then we get in the discussion about, there's FDA regulations versus FDA approvals of certain things. And then do we follow some of those FDA regulations in our guidelines as well? And so this is a huge conversation, I think.
If they're specific, do any of the other vets have, Everman or, Dr. Everman or Manhart, either you guys have specific?
Well, I would agree with Alice. I think that it's too broad of a category and needs a lot of discussion, because a blanket with magnets isn't the same thing as doing acupuncture or cold laser or something right before running, and so it's way too broad of a category. It does bear checking into. A little bit hard to police even some of that. So
Sun put out a pulsed electromagnetic field?
I mean, PEMF is different than a blanket that has magnets in it, right? Like there's a lot of nuances here.
Well, do you guys have specific concerns about any of these that are listed or others that aren't listed?
Nebulizer would be the one, but then that depends on what you're putting in the nebulizer, right? You can put all kinds of things in a nebulizer, right? So that, they could be doing things in there that aren't, so do we regulate what's in the nebulizer, right? Then we're opening up that can of worms. So.
Well, and some of the laser or acupuncture modalities, again, you could be blocking something that maybe it makes the horse feel better, but it blocks a stress fracture or some other thing like that. So, there are reasons for doing those things, but each one probably deserves research and consideration on their own. It's not a broad category.
Yeah, and acupuncture gets down that next rabbit hole of, are you using medications with those needles, or are you just using the small needles, and are you licensed in acupuncture and have gone through training, and what are you actually doing with those needles?
Yeah. Out. William.
Hey, sorry.
Dr. Everman, you guys have?
Well, I think that your basic premise that nothing should be given within 48 hours of a race is a good idea. And that would just take all these things into consideration and just say you can't do it within, if the horse is ready to race, it shouldn't need these things. And if it's not ready to race, don't enter it.
But is putting on a blanket with magnets versus a heavy blanket to warm up the muscles, like, I feel like we're really going to start splitting hairs of what obviously don't give anything to the horse, but what is giving something to the horse, right? Technically lasering, you're giving something to the horse, but you're treating something. So that's where I feel like this is huge conversations.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to stand in the way of a valuable placebo.
No.
Exactly. Well, that's the next conversation. Like, are we policing something that's not doing anything anyways, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
It sounds like this list that we're looking at kind of spans the gap of stuff that we might want to look at some point for specific reasons, and stuff that is more akin to high school athletes wearing the same pair of socks for a few weeks too long.
Yeah.
This committee is the appropriate place if we have specific concerns or issues like these to look at this point. It doesn't sound like any of our medical advisors have any concerns about these specific items or others that they feel they need to bring to the fore? Correct? I see
Correct.
heads.
That's correct.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. We'll move on. Anybody, yeah, anybody in the room? Next item is discussion of the impact of black market racing on animal welfare. This goes without saying, so I'm going to say it anyway. The commission's opposed to it and thinks that the impact is bad. I think the larger question is what do we do about it? How do we learn more about it? Anybody have any comment on this issue?
I think that's gonna be a difficult one, simply because we don't have jurisdiction in those locations where this is happening, so what do you do?
Who does have jury? Would that be state police?
Commissioner, the problem with that is it's on private property. This is a problem around the nation, and it's very difficult to prove, because if horses are racing, that's not illegal, as long as they're not wagering on it. And proving that they're wagering on it is almost impossible. I can tell you, somewhat anecdotally, that Georgia, that has no racing, has probably the worst amount of illegal bad operators, where a state like us may have some, but it's not nearly at the same level. And I believe, again, there's no proof on this, that because we're giving legal opportunities, that whole system is cleaner. Because if they're match racing, and then they bring their horse to here, and they have drugs in their system, they can't race. So, and there's less need to match race if there's legal racing.
Anybody have any ideas on how we could get an idea of how successful we are at making legal racing more appealing than illegal racing?
Number of race days.
And down the agenda, we have purses, which we're going to discuss as well.
Can I just echo something Connie said?
Yes, please do.
I think one thing that we did that had a huge difference years ago was hair testing. And if we can expand that to test for more than just those few things that we do test for currently, it's expensive. It takes time to get those tests back, but a lot of our off-track horses can run on whatever they want off-track. And then they can clear their system in the amount of time that they need to, depending on the pharmaceutical, and come back to race inside. And so if we can test further out, it may have an effect on those outside racing jurisdictions. Now, maybe those horses won't come race with us at all. So that's another thing, but.
Do you have a panel of tests you would recommend at this time?
It's a great conversation to have with the people who are doing the hair testing, and most of the research is coming out of Davis, and it changes month by month. But we could come together and come up with a list. But it's expensive. I mean, it's a big chunk of our budget.
Who would be the person looking into that?
Your commission vet?
I will be working on that.
Outstanding. Anyone have any other thoughts on black market racing other than racing cleanly and legally seems like the most sportsman-like thing to do, sportsperson-like thing to do? Let's have good, clean, legal.
I'm gonna say, so several of our violators in the last couple of years have been horses that were match racing elsewhere, and then when we tested them here, they were violators, and so we picked that up, and then they didn't race here. So so that is something that already we're looking at or for. Is it?
That's excellent. Other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay. Further discussion on 48-hour NSAIDs. Any of the vets have any comments?
I think we've talked about it a ton. I don't know if there's much more to talk about, is there?
I believe the place that we're in now, Commissioner Barry, is that we had said that we wanted to do the rulemaking after the season was over because it was too close. There was the sticking point, I think, that we had, which we will need to figure out, is do we change it to 40 hours and not change the dose, or do we change both, or do we change out to 72 hours?
And on this issue, I think we're going to postpone in-depth discussion until Dr. Stein's on board. Does that sound good to everybody? Discussion on jurisdictions that are not using LASIX.
And just for clarity, for those that don't know, Dr. Stein is hopefully our newest commissioner who will be starting, he'll be confirmed in the next couple of days. He has 25 years of experience with racing,
Standardbred racing?
Standardbred racing as a driver, owner, and veterinarian. So he can bring more expertise with his experience on these issues as well.
Discussion on jurisdictions not using LASIX, probably also a good one to postpone. Anybody have discussion on that at this point? Does anybody have thoughts?
The only thing I can tell you about that, and this may be the discussion we have, if anything, is 2-year-olds and stake races. Is that something we want to consider, and what are the pros and cons, and how do people feel about that? So maybe just getting some comment on that.
Yeah, I'd certainly welcome more information.
Any opinions on that from anyone? No?
Okay.
This is going to be really super quick.
Anyone on item number 7, discussion industry partners on the law places and other initiatives?
This is the opportunity to say the changes we made that we enacted this summer, what went well, what didn't go well, what would you like changed? If nobody in the audience has any questions, maybe Dr. Everman can talk about what he's seen or heard.
Could you rephrase that question? It was hard to hear you.
I'm terribly sorry. So Dr. Everman, the question is, has the industry noticed, does the industry have any concerns or comments about how the rollout of the change of LASIX and other initiatives have gone? And I wondered if you've heard anything about complaints or concerns about the changes that we made for the current racing year.
I have not heard any complaints about the changes we made for this year. The one thing I have noticed is that the people will use whatever is permitted, and whether they need it or not. And you can look at the butte usage in our horses that race in Oregon, and a high percentage of them do not need any butte and don't run any better with it. And yet, over 90% of the horses are receiving it because it's permitted. So the LASIX is a similar situation. I think we need to look carefully at what we permit and why we permit it, how we permit it, because whatever is allowed will be used.
Any other comments from the vets?
Yeah, I will say anecdotally, I've got 2 horses I know of that run in Washington at Emerald on a higher dose of butte that ran in Oregon and were considered poor performers. There was no vet there to scope the horse. There was no blood out of the nose, but it was perceived by the horsemen that these two horses, two different trainers, had bled. And they waited a while to run them back again, and they ran them in a different jurisdiction on higher Butte, or forgive me, Lasix, and they performed better. Very anecdotal, nothing that I can prove or write home about, but that I know. I also will say the commission did a great job of attempting to communicate with horsemen about the changes in rules and regulations, but we did have a handful of horses show up at Prineville to run that were on the HISA list because they had been injected within 14 days, and they didn't understand that Oregon was following the 14-day rule and they were not allowed to run. So it's best we can continue to educate, especially as things change, and whatever we can do to work with the horsemen's associations to try and keep people in the loop and communicate with the vets in other jurisdictions as well as things change, because that was part of the problem. It was the vet at Emerald Downs that had injected the horse at 10 days and it ended up on the list, which is appropriate. The vet put the horse on the list because she injected it, right? But then they hauled to Prineville and couldn't run. So the more communication, the better, always.
Any other comments? Okay.
Go wait, we have one. Yes.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Rod Lowe, Director of Racing, Grants Pass Downs, Chair Barry, Executive Director of WIN, and Commissioners. I've made this comment before, and I still want to, I don't know where all of these medication questions and rulings are coming from. My only comment is, from a racetrack standpoint and from a regional standpoint, whatever we do, I want to try to keep as consistent as we can with other states around us. So that exactly what that was talking about, that we have trainers, owners that are confused from one jurisdiction to another of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And so whatever we do, please keep that in mind, that we want to stay as consistent as we can and not really go out of other jurisdictions, and at least on the West Coast. You know, I don't think we need to worry about what's happening in Kentucky or places like that, but at least on the West Coast of those areas, and what that medication and restrictions are.
And just to add to that, I think we are well in line with other jurisdictions on the crop roll as is currently. I think that where we are right now with Lasix is consistent with other jurisdictions. Identical pretty much to Washington, as I understand. I may not be, I may have to double check that, but I believe that's the case. As far as a restriction on devices, I haven't looked at the other areas, but that was coming from ARCIA, so I'll look more into that and we can discuss that more on an individual basis. It sounds like that's the way we want to go with that. And then, as I understand it, pretty much nobody around us is using NSAIDs before 48 hours. So we are the outlier on that one.
Okay.
But I agree that we need to keep it as consistent as possible. Sure.
All right, thank you.
Good, excellent comment.
Are there specific areas where you would like to see us come in line with other states, or other states come in line with us?
I don't know of any other areas, but like when you said, well, no Lasix, you know, and then we have Lasix in other areas. I mean, those types of things, I don't think we want to be the outlier of medications that are doing that, and we want to be consistent. We don't want any of our horsemen or horses or trainers to get in trouble for things that they don't understand. And like you said about education, I don't think there's been any problem, like Dr. Everman said, with the people with the changes that we did make. I don't think there's been any issues with that. I haven't heard any comments, any issues with that. But going forward, just, being consistent with other places is my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Bodie, Executive Director of Oregon HPPA. And Chair and everyone, thank you for letting me speak. This is just something that just came up a couple of days ago, and I just found it so annoying. I want to make a statement. I talked to Dr. Everman a few days ago about putting up a vets list, so that the horsemen, he posted on the window so that the horsemen know who's on a vets list, what they need to do, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, I'm happy to do that, Randy. He goes, but let me tell you that I can only do for our Oregon horses. And as I sit here and I think ICE is out there trying to rule the world, but yet we can't go get a vets list from ICE. There is no such thing. So if you raced at Ferndale in California, or you raced it up in Seattle, or wherever you might have been, and you wind up coming to Oregon, only when they enter the horse and Jerry goes into Encompass and looks, does that horse pop and say, oh, that horse was put on a vets list at Ferndale. And so I just, I think it's just difficult for the horsemen that they don't even always know what's happening other places. And our stewards, our state veterinarian, have no place to go on the computer where they can just push a button and get a list. And I think that's a little reprehensible for a body that looks to govern the entirety of horse racing to be, so lax in that area. So anyway, that was all I had. I really appreciate, Dr. Everman's time and explaining it to me, and we'll do fine locally, but it'd be nice to know everything. So that's all I had.
I don't know if anybody has numbers on this, but I bet you guys have an idea. Would it be fair to say most of the horsemen in the region are racing between Washington, Oregon, California, and Idaho?
Sure.
Okay, so coordination between those four, from what Rob was saying, what you're saying, coordination between those four
would catch a lot of
benefit the horse.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that it benefits everybody, because nobody likes to be put in a position, whether it's the secretary or the stewards or the state veterinarian, where you got some horseman mad because he just figured out he's on a list. And I talked to the one horseman that this came up in recently, and he said, he goes, they didn't even tell me I got put on the list. And he gets down here and he enters the horse and pops up, that he was put on the vets list in California, and no time then to get the horse off the list. So just out of luck for that horse. So anyway, I just found it to be a real glaring hole in the system.
Is it common that a horseman would have a horse put on the list and they wouldn't be notified?
They don't always make the decision right at the moment when it happens. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a normal or abnormal to it. Mike could probably speak to it. I know we have a way we do things here, but I don't know if they do that every place. So.
And some people buy horses. So they're not always claimed. They might buy a horse and not be full disclosure.
Another point is, and maybe Dr. Everman can talk about this, as I understand it now, if you're put on a HISA list, to get off the list, you have to go back to the veterinarian that put you on the list, even if it's in another state.
Yes, I could comment on that. Any horse, we can find out who is on a list if we know the horse's name. That's why it comes up when they enter the horse. Jerry Cole puts that horse's name in, and it pops up if they're on a list. So any trainer that wants to know if their horse is on a list can find out. And I have certainly had a number of trainers come to me and ask me to look a horse up and find out if it's on any list. And it might be on a starter's list or a steward's list or a veterinarian's list. We can find that out. But it is true that the only vet that can take a horse off a vet's list is the vet that put it on. So if we do the work at Grants Pass that is listed as what is required, and then I have to call or email the vet that put it on, and they will almost always take it off. Some of them have more difficulty than others getting this done, but it can be done if we know the horse's name.
Back to communication between jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leave that for now. Sound good? Okay, moving on. Suicide prevention.
I can speak to it. I'll do an intro. Good morning, Michael Lloyd, Director of Mutuals for the Oregon Racing Commission. I oversee a lot of the online wagering companies, the licensees that are licensed in Oregon. And part of my auditing regular duties involves checking every group's responsible gaming components. In a recent audit, one group made me aware of additional above and beyond components are centered around suicide prevention in conjunction with their responsible wagering. It's a group that has a very strong UK customer service team that they've just integrated within their US areas. I thought it was a very worthy topic to bring up with the committee here. I think that's how that got entered to it, and I think that's a great overview presentation of why it's there. They are looking for key phrases and whatnot. Again, a lot of the suicide prevention is generally around problem gambling, or has many touch points within that group, and I think it was worthy of discussion. As an aside, I just want to personally thank Gameplay Network, which was the licensee who brought this to our attention.
Thank you very much. Part of why I was brought into the commission is because of my experience as a mental health care provider. Before I get going, just because anytime I get an audience, I do this. If you have a person who you care about who is departing from baseline, they give you all sorts of lists of weird stuff people do that they think might make them suicidal. It just whatever's weird for that person. You know the people in your life. You're the person who's in the best position to screen for them. Please, if you think there's something to be concerned about, directly ask them, hey, are you feeling suicidal? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Please do not say, you're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? Because one says, hey man, I'm here to help. Come on, let's talk about this, let's figure it out. And the other says, I'm trying to be polite, and if you kill yourself, I don't want to sleep bad the next night. If the person says, yes, I am thinking about, they'll either say, heck no, I'm not. Or they will say, yeah, I'm thinking about it. Please connect them with a medical provider. Any clinic should be able to make a good referral, and it's the most straightforward way to tell a person to get connected. With that said, I'm glad that Mike has brought up gambling-related suicide. It has a long history among human beings. I'm also interested in other stakeholders, and I'd be shocked I couldn't find anybody researching jockey or owner suicide. That's a pretty narrow demographic. Speculatively, I think there may be some risk factors among people involved in racing. Sorry, go ahead.
We have two long-standing experts on racing. Well, there are many, but particularly our presiding steward and our deputy steward. Maybe they can talk about any trends or, because I asked Mike this, and what they've seen, and if it's been an issue in the past, that doesn't mean it couldn't be an issue in the future if it's not, but kind of give us a baseline on what they've seen.
Yeah, after we talked about this, I got to thinking about it, and I was able to come up with 3 times in my lifetime. One was here in Oregon, it was a murder-suicide. One, the jockey back that I worked with up at Minnesota and Nebraska that offed himself. That was, 10 years ago or something like that. And another, a pony rider at Portland Meadows, tried to kill herself, was not successful. But that's been spread out over all these years, and I don't know the pertinence regarding why they did it. I think it was more personal matters, relationships, that kind of thing. So it's kind of hard to comment on a trend because it's been spread out so long. Terry, do you have anything?
No.
Chair Barry, Commissioner Wynn, Rod Lowe, Grants Pass Downs. I have been working on for the last 3 years to address backside issues, and suicide is one of them. And so I've encouraged the OHPBA to fund a chaplain from RTCA. And I want to keep that program going only because they see this a lot. Whether it happens a lot, but they see people just like what Commissioner Barry was saying, people that are thinking about it. You know, most people don't go through it, but they're thinking about it. And so I want to encourage the commission, the OHPBA, all of the stakeholders to still be involved with this group, because I think it's important. Terry Hayes is our chaplain here, and he goes around the backside and he speaks with people and he does our prayers and we have some dinners, and I would like to see him do more, and I would like him to go to each racetrack, and we're working on that funding to go to every racetrack, because I think it's important for our backside group especially. Maybe we're not reaching the gamblers per se, but at least our backside people, that they have somebody to go to and have somebody that's caring and willing to help if they need help. And we're trying to reach out, and Terry he's been here for about a year now, mainly Grants Pass, and he did go to Tillamook this year. He hasn't made it to Union or Prineville yet, but I would really encourage us to keep that program going. And RTCA has, they have educational type of things for suicide, and they've seen it and they know how to handle that. And having Terry going through some training or through that, because he's on the backside and because he is walking around with those individuals, that I really think that that's important for us to keep going.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I'll go a step further to say that I've been very impressed with people go to the hospital, they get injured, he's right there with them, he stays up all night with them if he needs to, and it really is valuable, because Rod can't leave the races to do that. You know, it's invaluable. I agree. If we can find a way to help fund more of that, I think it's really worthwhile. Excellent point.
Absolutely.
One more.
Daryl here. I agree with Rob just said, it's so important that you have someone like Terry. And over the years now, with this chaplaincies throughout the country, that they're pretty strong. And if you have someone to go to, in California, we have the Winners Foundation. And I've been on the board for at least 15 years. And we've saved a lot of lives. When it comes to suicide, it seems in the last year we've had 2 riders commit suicide. And they had weight problems. That's been a big thing. They're reducing too hard. And thank God, in the last, I'd say 5-6 years, the weights have been increased substantially, and the health of riders is so much better. You can only be so big to be a rider, and we know this. But people are getting bigger, football players, people are bigger, jockeys are bigger. So we've had plenty of help there. Getting back to suicide, at least people are talking about it now, Dr. Barry. It's out there, and that's so important that you have somebody to talk to. And I'm just, it makes me feel good that racetracks now, there's more people involved helping the backside people, because everybody helps each other on the backside. But when you have professionals and people that you can pick up the phone and say, you know, I'm having bad thoughts or whatever, they can talk to people. So I'm glad that things are happening with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, you need blush. I hear 2 conversations that are related. One is suicide prevention related to gambling, which is very specific and much better understood. Sorry, and much better understood, thank you, than mental health or suicide in our narrow graphic. It sounds like mental health, as it relates to horse racing, may be within the purview of this committee, and there might be recommendations we could make to the commission or reports we could give to the commission in the future. Does that sound? Am I hearing everything?
I agree with that. I would also say that as a best practice, I would direct my director of mutuals to be sharing that best practice with other online wagering companies. I don't know that we need to go down the road of a rule yet, but sometimes just letting them know other ADWs are doing it may cause them to spread that. We can do some good that way across the nation.
This seems important, but I'm not sure what the commission would do about it. Yeah, I'm not sure what's actionable.
Would it be our role to give more funding for the priests to be at other racetracks? So that's something we could do.
I think that's what the ask is to consider that funding as part of maybe the next round of funding for the fair meets.
Are there any other things people would like to ask for that would support the emotional health of the riders and the animals? I would point out that the emotional health of the rider has a very significant interplay with the well-being of the animal. All stat. Do we have other ways that we would like to support the mental health folks affiliated or involved with racing, or any of our stakeholders?
I think the best way that we can do that is by having this person on site and focusing any financials we have to have that person be on site at all of the races. I think that having a professional to talk to is about the best offer we can give give.
Like, is that just somebody who is there because racing's emotion?
But it sounds like they're always here at Grants Pass, correct? Yes.
That's excellent.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's a great thing to start with.
Malia?
Connie, do you know if we have a suicide prevention hotline posted on the website? Maybe that would be something to have readily available.
And Micah and you can make that happen.
Okay.
Thank you for volunteering.
That's a good suggestion as
It's a
well.
great
I was just
suggestion.
thinking that, because isn't there a nationwide like 411 now or?
There may be Oregon-specific ones, similar to what we do with responsible gaming. The Oregon has a specific hotline for it as well. We will investigate and address it.
I would recommend putting it on all of our pages.
Okay.
Excellent. We want to move on to head check, or are there other things to be discussed here?
We move on.
All right. Connie, take it away.
We talked about this before. Some of you are familiar with head check, and I think we're going to be calling Daryl up again. One of my questions, I was actually hoping more of the jockeys would come to see if that program is from the perspective of the jockeys, is it just a pain in the neck? Is it actually helpful? And does everybody know what head check is? Who's in this audience?
I don't.
Okay. Head check is a program that has a database where if somebody has a concussion, they're seen by, here would probably be a lot of our EMT people, and given a scale, and if they can't ride for a while because they've been checked out, it's entered in there, so they go to another track. They could say, okay, this person's had 4 concussions, this person's had 1, you know, how do you want to? So it's just to try to help the jockeys stay healthier, despite themselves sometimes. So Daryl, do you have any opinions on that, or anybody else, of course? And you didn't think you were going to be talking to it, did you? Again, we had hoped that some of the jockeys could show up, but they're shy.
Yeah. Well, in the last couple of years, since we've been doing the head check, I would think it's going to be helpful, because now there's a system that tracks it. And there's a convention in the second week in October in Lexington, and people coming from all over the world to talk about mental health, wellness, and people are a little leery, to be perfectly frank. They don't know how this really works. And it has to be administered by, usually it's a paramedic or nurse practitioner, or someone that's qualified in SCAT 5, which is a different programs they use there. They know how to ask the questions and look into a rider's eyes. They know if there's maybe something wrong by just the questions they ask. Not too long ago at Santa Anita, I had a doctor call me from Northern California. A rider went down and he got up and he said he was okay, but on the way down he held his head like he got nicked. And they called the race off because he was still on the ground, but he came back to the jocks room and he wanted to ride like he was in the next race or 2 races later. And it looked bad on film, like he got kicked in the head, nicked. And he didn't get up for for like 5 seconds. But when he got up, they called the race off, but he was okay. So now he gets back in the jockey's room and he wants to ride 2 races later. He's got 2 or 3 more mounts. Well, I've seen it, and where riders have concussions and they think they're okay. I've had them call me from the steward stand and say, Daryl, this jock went down bad, and it looked like, he got hit hard, but he sounds okay, he looks okay. This is the stewards. And they put him on the phone with me. And he said he sounded fine, and he went out and rode. They let him ride, and he won 2 more races that night. The next day when I talked to him, he didn't even remember talking to me the night before. That's what happened. So getting back to Santa Anita, this rider came back to the room. He looked a little dazed, but he said, I'm fine now, I'm okay. He said, I said, well, you didn't get up, what? You know, he said, I just wanted to make sure I was okay. So the doctor from Northern California that works with HISA, he had me on Zoom with the rider. And he had him go through all these questions and had him balance and stand on one foot. And it worked, and he was okay. But I think this is gonna work, you know, for the way they have it set up, but it's like anything else, it's all new, it's time consuming, and it costs, it's $150 per rider. Now, they picked up the expense in California, which is a good thing, because it has to be done annually, but at least they're tracking it now. So, you know, everybody talks high of it, and I'm sure it's good, and time will tell, but I think it's a good thing. Thank you very much. Questions?
I have a question. So, when a rider has a concussion, is someone checking their helmet?
Yes.
Are jockeys typically replacing a helmet if they have a hard fall on their head?
Yes. These new helmets are designed to absorb just the hit.
Yeah.
And if it's hit hard, or they have to change these helmets, because if it's hit a few times, you know, the impact isn't as, it doesn't take the impact like it would if it was a new helmet. So it does do the job, and they have a safety steward, or the stewards check and make sure they're using these helmets that are, you know, designed for safety. And there's a lot of brands now, and they work.
Yeah.
They do work. So, yeah.
Do you see that it's a cost issue for jockeys where maybe they wouldn't want to replace a helmet after a fall because of the expense?
Yes, because they are expensive.
Right.
They range from probably average 300 to 600-700. They're expensive.
May I have Karen Parkman come up and talk about a program that we're working on? If she doesn't want to come up, never mind. I'm going to tell you about an initiative that we're working on that Karen Parkman brought up, and we didn't have time to fully put it in place this year. But what we would like to do is we're trying to find a way, based on feedback that we got from the jockeys, to have a voucher program where if somebody has a bad fall, they can get a voucher from us and we will automatically replace their helmet. And we just decided to do that. We didn't even ask the commissioner, sorry. So we just need to contact the vendor to find out how we can get that piece in there. So do you think that'll be helpful?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That would be greatly appreciated. Because everything is, whether it's the riding crops, they've changed them a number of times now. They went from the round one to, none of the riders like that at all. So there's very few using those rounds, but everything is expensive. The boots, the saddles, the vests, and it keeps going up like everything else. So, yes, that would make a big difference. They would replace the helmets if there was money available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else on head check?
That's it. I think the biggest obstacle, which I need to find out, is how do we get a doctor that can talk to them and how that cost works. That may be why it was more expensive than what we had. So I'll do a little more research on that and bring it back to you on the next meeting. Because I don't think that, you know, our current EMTs would or could do it, or we need to have the same person each time. So that's probably the biggest obstacle we would need to look at.
safety. Doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of data out there. Intuitively, it makes sense that if we're racing more, we'll be better at it. And if we have purses that incentivize good racing, we'll be drawing folks out of the illegal market, hopefully. Anybody have anything other than that? That's what I've got so far.
Well, I know that here in Oregon, the bigger purses will make the riders a little bit more aggressive. But more so than safety, it affects the crop world. They get a little, aggressive and they overuse the crop for the bigger purses.
Maybe we need to, maybe if they're bigger purses, we need to be extremely strict on those. And, I mean, we just need to tell them, you can't break the crop wall, period. That needs to be.
So if we make the races more appealing, we've got to keep an extra close eye on things. Okay.
There is a ton of research on this. There are some really great retrospective studies of thousands and thousands of horses, both overseas and Hong Kong. There's a really good study that was done in 2016 in Great Britain, and another one that was done in 2018 here in the US, looking at all kinds of factors. Now, purse size is one of those things, and it's really hard to delve into it. It's a lot of data. It's a lot of information. It talks about everything from, mares versus stallions versus geldings, how many days a year they run, how many days their trainers run in a year, how long they've been in that barn. Like, there's so many things. And actually, purse size is one of the things that, if there is any correlation, smaller purses tend to have a lower fatality rate, which I hate to say, but it's true. But also, the number of days between races is a way bigger factor. And that's where having more race days in Oregon, so these horses don't have only a few weeks to run and they have to run every 2 weeks. If they can go 3 weeks, that's a much bigger factor than purse size. But the studies are there. They're done. There's a lot of them. The data's there.
From a safety perspective, more races with small or same purses, rather, yeah.
Connie, I can send you some of these papers if you want them. You can distribute them.
Please do. Rod, anyone else, do you have any comments on the difference between, I think the question is, the difference between what's more effective, purse side or more race days? Not that we necessarily can do either one, but anybody else have any opinions on that? Which one you think is more impactful for safety? Come on up.
We gotta get Micah, you gotta get like a sound, like people. That's right.
We're gonna need you to come to more of our meetings.
Well, when I think about what's going on in the country with the lack of horses, people are going where the money is. It's as simple as that. They go where the purses are better. With the match races, I've had a big problem in California because they're outlawing them in California big time. You get caught, the rider's in big trouble. That's where the money was. It's been, because it's cash. But it's bad what they do with these races. I've never been to one, and they're not far from where I live. There's a couple, but they're toning it down big time. Just because it's so illegal what they're doing. It's bad. So it's gone away. And Oregon, I don't know where they're located, or how many match races they have. But more racing and purse money, that's where people are gonna go. It's just the way it is. Mike, getting back to as far as with the riding crops and riders abusing it, there's no excuse for abusing a horse. But I'm seeing in a lot of jurisdictions that the stewards are more concerned on how many times a jockey is hitting a horse than what's going on in the race. I've seen it. So there's so much emphasis on this. I don't see riders abusing horses. It happens once in a while, and if they do it, then they need to pay the price. because there's no excuse. But I don't see, if a rider goes over one time or two times, I mean, they get fines, and it really hurts them bad. When you get days or get fined, usually a lot of riders are having trouble adjusting to it, but they get it, because you hit them in the pocket, they get it.
They have been adjusting to it over time. It's kind of like muscle memory that, you get used to riding a certain style, ride to win, because that's the concept for most of my career in racing that I've seen until recently. What I have noticed are the number of inquiries have gone way down.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm seeing safer riding. It only makes sense if you have more control, because you have more control when you're not getting after it. So I see riders, horses staying straighter. The riding is so much better just because of the rules that are put in effect. Race riding is so much better because riders are, they take care of themselves pretty good out there, but they make mistakes, and a lot of times it's because they're overreacting, overhitting, losing control. I don't see that as much anymore. I see it a good thing. It's a lot safer.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on first size or race frequency? Okay, we had a lot of public comment. Any more public comment? Well, thank you everybody for being so darn diplomatic. I was really hoping I'd have a reason to pick this thing up. Three times I can hit?
Up to 3.
Up to only,
And then a chance to respond.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate the information and the conversation. I have a movement to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved and